got into affordable housing soon after college and went to work for a small affordable housing developer developing government subsidized housing. And I found it, a fulfilling thing to produce housing units from the ground up. And it's a complicated finance space. And so I spent quite a bit of time developing housing, and then I went to work for the federal government managing a federal housing program in DC for a short period of time. And I realized in the first 5 to 7 years of my career, and this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Bill Clinton famously used the word the digital divide, meaning that low-income people didn't have internet access. And I felt like that was going to change at some point, and of course it did. Not only do lower-income folks have internet access, but they have access to very, very cheap devices and Wi-Fi at every corner. So when I realized that poor people do use the internet, and they will use it even more in the future, and there's not any housing resources out there made to help surface affordable housing opportunities for low-income folks. Apartments.com and other Realtor.com, other ILSs, internet listing services, were out there for market rate apartments, but not affordable. And so when I was working for the federal government at the time, and I happened to be on a 4-10 schedule in DC, and that's you're working 4 10-hour days and you have off every Friday, and we had no kids, and my wife had a full-time job where she was working 5 days a week, and I could only lay on the couch and watch the History Channel every Friday for so long before I had to do something. Yeah. So I decided to build a website. Yeah. And I put together a database. I learned how to code and SEO myself, and it was my hobby for nearly a year before traffic started blossoming, and I realized that there was a potential business around it. Mm-hmm. No, I had no experience. I would say I was a computer nerd when I was a kid. I think I had a VIC-20 and wrote basic programming in BASIC, but other than that, I had no experience with coding, with SEO, with online advertising. I self-taught everything for the sole purpose of building out affordable housing online into something that people could use.
And where'd you go to, learn those things at that point in time?
There wasn't anywhere to go. I just had to acquire the knowledge myself. Just everything was self-taught. Yeah. It's a lot easier today. I mean, back when I built affordable housing online, there wasn't even, I can't remember what, Dreamweaver Ultra Dev 4 or something was the first tool I used to build affordable housing online. But now you have Wix and all, WordPress obviously. Yeah. But when I started affordable housing online, it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Anything you want to know now, you can watch a 10-minute YouTube video about it.
Well, I remember I was in it so early that I had a Google AdWords account before you could target keywords.
Really? And what point in time was that?
It was 2000. Yeah. Like, you literally just showed an ad to somebody who, for housing, who was searching for pots and pans. Like, it was really, there was no keyword targeting at all. Yeah. As the first version of AdWords. Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't by choice. It was forced upon us by Google. So, 2000, I founded the site, and it was run by one guy, me, and the data was mass-produced data with some machine quality checking through Melissa data type services, but for the most part it was very simple property pages and public housing authority pages with information about the programs they offer, their contact information. And the site was doing well on Google AdSense, producing a great living for me, and it wasn't even my main gig. And then that grew to a point where I was able to hire a couple of people to kind of grow it. But that growth, we weren't doing the right things. And something, you might be too young to remember this, but something came along called Google Panda and Google Penguin. Okay. And there were two major algorithm updates. And they took us from $25,000 a month in AdSense revenue to $2,000 a month overnight. 90% of our revenue evaporated overnight. And I had to let everybody go. And I had to make a decision. Are we going to figure out what happened? Are we going to figure out why Google doesn't like us anymore? Or am I just going to shut the doors? And so I started digging and teaching myself SEO, which I really hadn't done to that point. It was still my 2000 SEO skills that I was using. And this was in 2000, I think 8, 9-ish. And I realized that what we were producing really wasn't that useful for users. It wasn't deep enough data. It wasn't actionable enough. And I decided that I needed to kind of adopt. Google used to have this mantra. I'm not sure that they still live by it, but Google would always say that they are doing good by the user. The user is their first priority. Everything they do is to improve the user experience. And that's really not the mantra that I had operated under. My mantra was put as many ads on the page as possible because I need to get as much revenue in, and I really didn't invest in my content and the user experience. And so then we decided, you know what, screw revenue, it's not there anyway. We lost it all. Let's just start investing in user experience. Let's start doing more deeper data research to try and to surface more information that's more actionable. And almost instantly we started being rewarded by Google. So the aha moment there was, you create an experience where the average user that's interested in your subject matter, you create an experience that they can actually use to improve their lives. Everything else gets taken care of. You don't have to worry about revenue. You don't have to worry about SEO. You do that, and that takes care of itself. So that was the aha moment, is to stop worrying about the day-to-day metrics, stop worrying about where you rank every day for some crap content you've got out there. Improve your content, and the rankings will come. So since I didn't know anything when I started, I wish I knew everything. Yeah. Like I had to self-teach everything. But I think for a publisher so when I started, I had no competitors. There was no other resource out there. So it was pretty easy for me to set myself apart because there was no one else to be set apart from. We have many, many, many copycats now, some of which directly steal our content, some of which mimic our content, but don't have the research teams to surface what we do, so they only show 10 or 15% of it, but they show it in the same sort of format. And none of these competitors can come close to our rankings or our traffic because we've actually invested. And we now have a research team of 6 people that do nothing all day but gather information manually, plus all sorts of proprietary automated systems to gather information. So we're surfacing that information faster than any of our competitors can. And that's how we've remained competitive. What I would recommend for anyone starting today is don't fall into the trap of creating crap content. So if I want to, and I think it was one of your later questions, but what do I do outside of work? I am a woodworker, and I recently bought a sawmill. Literally, I take logs and I cut them into lumber as a hobby, but I think I might make it my third business. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, if I'm searching for a sawmill, I'll likely come across a bunch of crap review sites that are written in very poor English, that were obviously written by someone who's never spoken a word of English, and they're just affiliates. I can't trust any of them. If you're searching for a custom printed hats, and you come across an article, top 5 best custom printed hats. Well, every single one of them has an affiliate link to an Amazon page. I can't trust that. And so the most important thing for any content creator, I think now, is authenticity, is to make sure, internet users are smart. It only takes 3 sentences of your article to know whether or not a machine wrote it. And if you're doing that, then you better edit it yourself to make sure that whoever your audience is, if your audience is US based, make sure that it's genuine.
I mean, and I think everyone can relate to that. And that's a problem that we face as well on our own website, is we need to come off to our customers that we have now, potential customers, as someone that's trustworthy. So
yeah, and that brings me back to when I decided to start with Ezoic. And it was that period, when we had started our recovery. So traffic we were, I don't know, at that point, because we had fallen so far, it wasn't hard to see month over month 20% traffic improvements. And then one thing I hadn't addressed was revenue optimization. So now that we had addressed some of the SEO issues and we saw traffic improving, I then had to figure out, well, how am I going to increase revenue? Because I'm just on Google AdSense. And I wanted to get on Google Ad Exchange. But at the time, we were like 500,000 page views. And that was pretty good compared to when we had fallen all the way to the bottom. But now I think we're 4 or 5 million page views a month. Well, at the time, you couldn't get on Google Ad Exchange if you didn't have a few million page views, unless you went through some broker. And so when I started searching for revenue optimization vendors, you all popped up as a Google partner, but there was lots of other Google partners out there. And many of them are even offshore. And it was, even though I believe it was sitting on a Google domain, it just seemed really scammy. And all these promises of, we're going to double and triple your revenue. And I was skeptical of Ezoic, because you all were going to double or triple my revenue. In the end, you 10x'd our revenue, which still seems unbelievable. But my point is, you have an authenticity challenge. Because if you tell some developer, some publisher that you're going to 10x the revenue, they're going to tell you you're crazy, even though it happened to me. So you have to, in your marketing, you have to figure out how to convince people that it's true and it can happen to them. For our core site, Affordable Housing Online, it's still, the database still isn't as in-depth as it could be. It's very difficult to get that sort of information on affordable housing communities, because that market space is kind of flip-flopped. The demand model is flip-flopped. So if you're searching for a market rate apartment in Carlsbad, every single apartment community is likely advertising online, because usually there are more apartments than renters. Now, there are certain markets, and perhaps Carlsbad isn't a good example because I know you have an affordable housing issue, but usually that demand model is the apartment communities are looking for renters more than renters are looking for apartment communities. Well, in the affordable sector across the country, there's a huge shortage everywhere, so that demand model gets flipped and no apartment community advertises online. And there aren't good government sources for that information, so we are the source of that information. But the problem is that we sometimes can't get the information that we need in depth. Like, what are the amenities at the property? What are the income restrictions? What is the actual rent? So we have to manually contact these properties, and it's a labor cost intensive process. And we have a research team that's doing that, but it's it's a slow process. So the moonshot would be to have a research team of 10 or 15 researchers that do nothing but call properties all day long to ask, is there a waiting list? What is your current rent? Hey, we have this list of amenities, is this correct? And we're in the process. We just haven't made that step to increase our research team.
Yeah.
And then as far as new projects go, we are building a new site that is built around the market rate housing sector, apartment sector. And though that space is very crowded with companies like apartments.com, apartment guide, rent.com, realtor, all those, they are all specializing in luxury apartments and middle income apartments. That model, those internet listing services are really working for the properties, and that real estate space has something called revenue. They have their own version of revenue optimization. So, for example, the hotel sector, when you're looking for a hotel, you'll notice the prices are always very close to each other for that certain class of hotel for a certain day in a certain market. And that's because they're all feeding data into one central database, and they're all retrieving it through the revenue management software. And so if the Firemen's Association of America announces tomorrow that they're hosting their annual conference in Carlsbad for some dates in April of 2023, the hotel rates for that date range will instantly go up because of their revenue management software, and all the hotels are talking to each other through that system. Well, apartments are doing the same thing. So if the vacancies are low at a certain apartment community and they raise their rents, and you go in and you're fine to pay 10% more than the guy who leased yesterday, that data is getting fed into a system, and every other apartment community in Carlsbad sees that, and so they increase their lease rates as well. That's working against you, the renter. And there is no service out there that's helping the renter figure out where are the bumps, what types of apartments are driving these increases. Is it apartments that have gyms? Is it apartments that accept pets? Travel has kayak, where you can compare airfares, but the apartment industry has nothing like that. So we're building a product that acquires all of that data on the daily changes that you see, and compiles it, crunches the numbers, and presents it to a user to help them recommend to them what they should do. So when you go to Kayak and it says their advice is buy or wait on a ticket, we're going to do the same sort of thing. Our advice is that you should, lease rates are lower in January than they are in May. You should lease today, don't wait.